Guys, I'm psyched. If you're just starting out the process of becoming a freight broker or an agent, or you've been at it a while, but freight's barely trickling in, have you ever wondered if the advice that you're following for all of that is actually holding you back? I know it is from my perspective, at least, because after managing over $227 million in freight in my career, I quit my corporate job in 2023 and started my freight brokerage from scratch. There was no paycheck coming through anymore. I had no experience running a business at all. I tried a bunch, didn't work out. Definitely no mentor. And after reviewing over 500 different businesses that I could start when I was jobless, I went all in building a freight brokerage in particular because I knew it would give me real control over time and my income and life. I didn't have any agents, aka basically sales reps. If you're not too familiar with it, they're basically sales reps who get huge commission. If you are an agent, you can make 60 to 70%, which is crazy. That unlike any other profession. So freight broker or agent, both great choices. But it was just me and a laptop and my couch and a Ranger who's just out of frame. She's just looking at me all cute. But to get there, I had to completely ignore 99% of the advice out there. So this blueprint that I created, it's not just working for me, it's working for tons of our other members who've made the decision to build their brokerages from scratch as well, many of which with zero industry experience. We've got Andrew. He's my very first member who used this training. He's a former truck driver of 10 years, and so he had some experience. He's moved 260 loads already. We have Ben, who also he's landed 2 shippers within his first week, which is insane. We have Carl, who's an agent now, and he's moving loads for his brokerage that he was hired onto. We have Muhammad. He just became an agent. He's already moving freight, which is awesome. A majority of them, they just wanted to be a part of our very active online freight broker and agent startup community, which now has over 200 members because not having anyone there to help you start a full-blown business where you want to change your life and reach 7-8 figures, maybe it's possible for you to do that, but without someone to mentor you through what has worked and hasn't worked for them who's already been there, it's obviously a lot more challenging. So some members were drivers, some worked in warehouses, and others had no idea what logistics even was or meant. And now they're landing shippers and they're securing contracts and they're building real businesses. And watching it all unfold has been nothing short of inspiring for me. We'll go over the full blueprint, how to get legally set up and how much you can make and what it costs and how to find and talk to shippers, how to get awarded freight and how to actually go from zero to $1 million in revenue and not just sit through some weird motivational speech that doesn't get you anywhere. And to give you some perspective on how much of a perfectionist I am with what I'm about to teach you in this video is when I decided to train for a marathon and attempted a sub 6-minute 55-second mile split for each mile of the marathon, I was like, you know what, if the only way I can do that is if I learn from someone who's actually done that or better. So I hired the 2017 indoor marathon world record championship holder, Chris Zablocki, to coach me. Back when I lived in Chicago, I didn't want random advice from someone who might get me injured or might give me bad advice. I wanted to be set up perfectly right off the bat. I treated my training course the same exact way and this video, no shortcuts, just everything I've got, baby. So all right, quit yapping, Matt. Let's rock and roll. All right, so let's get set up legally as a freight broker. You don't have to do most of this, by the way, if you're thinking about becoming an agent. So you could ignore a lot of it, but it might be good to know if you're thinking about making that transition later. This is where we make sure you can operate legitimately and avoid fines or being shut down. The good news, setting up a freight brokerage is honestly pretty straightforward. And let's just break down exactly what you need and how much it costs. All right, first let's form your business, which is like your legal entity. This would be your LLC or corporation. 99% of brokers choose an LLC for simplicity and liability protection. You'll also want to register this in your home state. Don't get too creative and just like do the Wyoming stuff where there's like tax benefits and stuff. Do it in your home state, okay? Costs for this is different state to state. It's between $50 and $300 one time. It's not breaking the bank, okay? This is not wild. This step makes you not like a legal broker yet. We'll get there, but a legal company, which is great. It's a great first step. And this is going to get you your EIN number, otherwise known as your employer identification number from the IRS. It's free. It's basically like your business social security number. So this number you'll be adding to your W-9 that shippers are going to want from you when you sign on with them. Next is your FMCSA operating authority, and this is to legally broker loads. So you need your broker authority from the FMCSA, otherwise known as the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. This is also called getting your MC number, otherwise known as your motor carrier number, for brokering. And the cost for this, $300 flat for the application fee, one and done cost, easy, okay? Once submitted, it can take a couple weeks to be granted. Don't panic. This is the same for everyone. And this authority, it won't go active until you have a couple other things in place, which are your surety bond and your BOC3. It sounds scary and confusing, I know. Just stick with me. We got this. You don't need $75,000 cash by any means, far from it. Surety bond, it's like insurance. You pay a premium to a bond company. So I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. It's so hard in such a short video, but we got this. So depending on your experience and your credit rating, it can start at $1,000 per year right now, if you were to start today, and up to several thousand if you don't have the best history, but nothing wrong with getting a quote and just seeing what they have to say regardless of your situation. So the surety bond company, they vouch for you, like meaning they pay out if you default on paying carriers. Like for example, if you can't pay carrier on time for whatever reason, up to $75,000, they would pay the carrier using your $75,000, and then obviously they would need to be paid back from you eventually. And this is why we work with factoring companies, though, so we can completely avoid these late carrier payments that we're just talking about, because carriers are awesome and we want to treat them as best as we possibly can. So you'll get this by applying through a surety bond agency. They'll basically do a credit check and then they'll quote you a rate. And once you pay them for the year, like they then issue the bond, otherwise known as your Form BMC 84, as we said before, and then they file it with the FMCSA electronically. Done. Easy. Then you have your factoring company, which is similar to a bank, which again, it's not a requirement, but most brokers have a factoring service, okay? I'd say 99.9% of them do. The way it works is like once a load is delivered, you log into your factoring company's portal, and then you enter in all of the load details. You plug in how much the shipper agreed to pay you, and then how much you agreed to pay the carrier, and then the factoring company then pays your carrier right away. They pay you your profit, so they now know the profit margin because they know those two numbers, and they just then wait for your shipper to pay them, which could be like 30 days or 45 days, like 60 days. I've had some guy who waited like, I'm not even kidding you, a full year. And can you imagine how pissed I would have been if I were to be the one to give up that capital myself? That would have sucked, okay? So essentially, they're taking on that debt for you, which is why they charge you like a 1% to 3% of the load revenue, so they can deal with that BS if that ever comes about. Shippers, though, they typically pay out within 30 days. That's pretty ideal. Otherwise, your factoring company won't even accept them in the first place. And that small cut is the cost of you not having to be, like $50,000 in the hole waiting on slow paying customers. Like your factoring company floats that money basically so you can keep operating without draining your personal bank account while you're waiting to get paid. So you might get approved instantly if you already have some history by your factoring company in order to factor in the first place. Like, let's say maybe you have a few loads under your belt, which is great. Let's say you have a clean MC record or a good credit rating or a legitimate like business email and website. Like that by itself, it helps. It's not gonna be like the main deciding factor for them, but that helps. And maybe even like a shipper or two already sending you freight. That all helps to be able to get into them right away. And if you don't have much of that, then they might give you stricter terms like a higher reserve or a lower credit limit, or they might ask you to build more load history first, which could make them have you wait a few months or even up to a year to get fully approved. I have a massive list of 40 here in our Discord, and there are like hundreds out there, so you can easily just Google search a bunch of them. There's a couple of which have worked really well for a lot of our members and have stood out in a way that makes it so they get really good rates and they get approved right away for a lot of our current members. Next is your BOC3, okay? That's a form, which is another FMCSA requirement. It stands for Designation of Agents for Service of Process. So it's basically a company that assigns a person or company in each state who can receive legal papers on your behalf. Basically, in case you get like sued or you need to be like served papers. But that's not going to happen to you because I'm going to set you up perfectly. You're right here with me, all right? You're in good hands. You don't need 50 separate agents. You hire a company that has a nationwide network. Getting a BOC3 is very simple. It's very cheap. Many companies do it for a one-time fee of about $30 to $50. So what happens is you pay them, they file the BOC3 with the FMCSA for you, and you're done. And this is usually done after or around the same time as your authority application. Your broker authority, it won't become active until your BOC3 is on file. So just do that as soon as you get your MC number assigned. Next up is your UCR, which is otherwise known as your Unified Carrier Registration. This is a fee that interstate trucking companies and brokers have to pay annually. It's basically the government's way of saying like, hey, you know what? If you're going to use our highways to make money, you need to chip in for safety programs, which honestly, just considering the cost of it, valid. I get it. If it was really expensive, I'd be like, okay, I'm a little sour, but the fee for a broker, pretty small. You're looking at around $40 to $50 per year. You register and pay on the UCR website, or some states actually let you file through their portals. It's based on fleet size, but brokers pay the lowest tier since you don't own any vehicles, which is awesome. So don't overlook this though. Even though it's cheap, if you operate without paying UCR, you actually could get fined during DOT audits. So just like mark it on your calendar to renew every year and you should be fine. Next up is insurance, which is different from your surety bond, okay? The FMCSA, this blows my mind, okay, does not require brokers to carry insurance. It's required for carriers. However, most shippers require that you do have some type of coverage regardless. The policy you want to start with is contingent cargo insurance, which covers cargo if the carrier's insurance fails or is insufficient, or maybe it expired and you didn't know it was going to expire. Again, like this is optional from a legal standpoint, but it can make you far more attractive to shippers and protect you from certain risks. A shipper will almost never hire you if you don't have cargo insurance. So just do it. Like that's one of the things that they'll ask from you when they're trying to get you onboarded. So they're not super expensive. A basic policy, you're looking at around $1,000 a year. And then we have some other just miscellaneous startup costs and tools. At minimum, you need a computer, you need a phone, and an internet connection, which you likely already have. I'm not going to put that into the numbers that I'm going to put up on the screen in a few minutes. You already have it. I'm sure it's already in your budget. You'll also want to subscribe to a load board to find trucks. Popular ones, like DAT, for example, it costs around $150 per month for a basic broker plan, which becomes important once you start to actually move loads. And then you have your transportation management system, otherwise known as your TMS. So when you mention it, you just want to say TMS. You don't have to go through the whole thing, which is software to help you organize your loads. Some of them are free, which is great. Some of them cost you like $50 a month. Honestly though, like if you're moving a couple loads a week, you probably just need a spreadsheet to start. Honestly, there's no need to overcomplicate things or drop extra money on that stuff you don't need too early. I got very caught up in that because I'm addicted to trying to automate as many things as possible to not do as many things manual. And I ended up spending a lot of money that I didn't need to. So just a heads up. Same goes for CRM tools, otherwise known as your customer relationship management tools, which can help track shippers and follow-ups. You for sure need one of these eventually. This is kind of same to your TMS in some sense. Like this ranges from free to $50 a month. But again, like if you're not moving that much, Google or Excel sheets, it works just fine when you're starting. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. Okay. Next up is your carrier vetting tools, which helps you check their insurance or their safety scores and maybe their authority, which are important when you start booking trucks regularly. There's a lot of sketchy ones out there. Don't double broker loads. There's a lot of carriers who kind of fake who they are and they try to re-broker it. This tool can run between $50 and $200 a month, depending on which service you choose. Carrier OK is a pretty good one. For office supplies, you don't need much. If you're working from home, don't get a printer, don't get a scanner. That is 90s stuff, okay? We have email now. I highly recommend get Outlook. Don't get Gmail, otherwise people will think you're trying to scam them. Emails getting sent from Gmail to someone brand new have more of a chance to be put into the spam folder than from Outlook. So I'm just saying, in terms of your marketing, one-page website, just so shippers know that you're legit. You get one from someone on Fiverr or Upwork for like $100. Do not go overboard here by any means. Like, no, don't spend $1,000, $2,000. What you can do, you don't have to. Shippers don't care at all about what's on your site. I have asked them. They're like, we don't even read it. I don't even know what's on your site. I've never even seen it. But I've done like tens of thousands of dollars of load with them. You might also want a business card if you're out networking or you're prospecting in person. So let's just budget like $50 for that right off the bat. When you keep looking at them every day, you're going to realize you're going to want to change something. So maybe just spend your money on like $50 at first and then update it. Also think about having a cash flow cushion when you first start. Since your business, it doesn't have a credit rating yet, some carriers may want part of their pay up front instead of the full load cost after delivery, especially in the beginning when they see that you have a brand new MC number reaching out to them with no history. And this would just be up until you've built up trust and credit through consistent and on-time carrier payments. And this means like try and focus on carriers who are like owner-operators who maybe don't have a factoring company. And if they do have a factoring company, call them up and be like, hey, I'm normal. Is there anything I can do to confirm that I will for sure pay this carrier on time? Let them know you have a factoring company. A lot of that helps. But individual owner-operators are your bread and butter when you first start. Then let's talk about a business bank account. That keeps everything clean. For taxes, it's required if you're using factoring company, by the way, or you're applying for like a business credit later if you need it. Most are free or low cost to maintain. So just saying, I think I pay like $25 for mine. So without yapping through like all the grand totals, just pause the video screen here in a few seconds, take some screenshots, and then let's just rock and roll to the next step. get you your customers now, because without shippers, we have no business. So the biggest mistake that new brokers or agents make is reaching out to shippers and never following up again the right way. Okay. Not asking the right questions is another one. And also providing zero value. Man, I'm a brand new broker. There's billion-dollar freight brokerages out there. How can I compete against them? How do I provide value? I got you. Okay. So to get your first real clients, you do need to offer value, and you can as a startup brokerage, even if it is just yourself. If you quit your job as a carrier, for example, you already know the freight world and you speak the language already, which is great. Use that to your advantage. Maybe you hauled steel or produce for years. Who better to broker those kinds of loads than someone who already knows how they need to be handled? Leverage your background. If you're a complete beginner, that is totally okay. You can still research and understand a niche so you can be seen as the subject matter expert. There is only so far you can go on a phone call with a shipper where you can take confidence up until you need to actually provide things that they didn't know maybe they needed, or maybe were presented with data that you found that they didn't even know existed. Bunch of other things, okay? We need to become the subject matter expert, otherwise known as the SME. What's important is to pick a niche, like a trailer type or a product or a region that you want to focus on. For example, reefers in the Midwest, flatbeds hauling lumber in your state, tankers hauling chemicals on the Gulf Coast, end dumps moving scrap metal in the Northeast, dry vans hauling automotive parts in the Great Lakes, refrigerated LTL for produce on the West Coast. We're on a roll. Power-only loads moving construction equipment in Texas. And then find shippers in that space. Let me give you a concrete example. I mentored a new broker. His name was Alex. He had zero industry contacts. We decided he'd focus on local food distributors because food needs constant shipping, and he understood reefer trucks a little bit, actually. So Alex made a list of 400 food and beverage companies in his region. Everything from small snack food manufacturers to mid-sized produce distributors. He then picked up the phone. Yes, calling is still very much a thing. The first 320 calls, total rejections. He got hung up on once, even, I think. He called me and he was like, dude, that sucked. I'm like, yeah, it's normal. You're good. Don't worry. He's like, oh, okay. Sounds good. Bye. But on call number 321, he reached a produce company that was having a lot of trouble covering one of their lanes, especially when it was a last-minute request. I mean, but yeah, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, covering anything last minute sucks. So I can understand why they'd have an issue there. I digress. Alex then found his way into that shipper. He was thinking, like, this is my one chance to, like, finally stand out. My shipper actually gave me a pain point. Let's actually make this happen. And that shipping manager agreed to let Alex quote that lane. And it worked for them. And Alex would just like worked his buns off then to find a good quality carrier using his carrier vetting tool and his load board and everything, and gave that shipper exceptional service and fulfilled that first load that did turn out to actually be last minute, just like he was told to expect. And within 3 months, that shipper was giving him 5 loads every week, which turned into a dedicated lane, giving him a profit margin of $150 per load on one lane with that one shipper. I'm so bad at math, but whatever 150 is times 20, that's what he was making every month for that one shipper for that one lane. So now think of doing that for like 5 other shippers. That is life-changing money for most of us, man. Like, boom. First client landed by Alex. Alex started finding that traction from shifting from like, hey, got any loads? Like every single other newbie starts saying. And instead, he was saying something along the lines of like, hey, you know what? I understand you ship produce out of state. I know for your specific product, capacity gets pretty tight right now in your specific city or neighborhood. How are you currently handling that? You can also say, hey, is there a specific lane that you have trouble covering? Is there anything your current brokers aren't doing that a new one could help with? There is 1,000 other scenarios that can happen. Ask the right questions, find a gap, find a way to fill it, and when following up, add value, ideally using market data, which I talk a lot about on our Discord group. It can get very complicated very quick. If we went over it right now, there would be I swear to God, it'd be another hour long, but can't get into it right now. I can't digress. We're going to keep rocking. Here's a simple strategy to get your first shippers behind your belt. Find 500 potential shippers in a niche you understand or you have researched ahead of time. If you're a former carrier, start with industries whose freight you've hauled first. If not, pick an industry. For example, construction, food products, auto parts. Use Google, LinkedIn, Macrae's Blue Book, Apollo.io to find companies that manufacture, distribute, or supply those goods. Do a little bit of homework on each company. Who's the shipping manager? Who's the logistics manager? LinkedIn Navigator is great for this, okay? $100 a month, very worth it. What do they ship? Jot down a quick fact or pain point they might have. For example, they ship heavy equipment, which often needs flatbeds and permits, which can be harder to find. Or they ship produce and haul to neighboring states. Timing and refrigeration is very critical there. Start calling, emailing, walk up to the door. Phone calls tend to have higher success for initial contact. In person is actually even better. I know not everyone has that luxury or enjoys that very much. So we'll focus on stuff we can all take advantage of, whether you are in state or out of state. So calling is probably your best bet. First, we want to prepare a 20-second opening that introduces you and highlights a benefit. For example, hi. Would you be able to help me with something logistics related by chance? Wait for a response. Yes? Okay, cool. I specialize in their specific product type. Notice you have a product launch based on your recent LinkedIn post, and I've got vetted trucks in your neighborhood. I work with customer 1 and customer 2 near you, if that's true. And notice these loads can be a little bit tougher to cover. These specific lanes or this type of product can be tougher to cover in this time of year, especially last minute. What's your current process like to find these carriers? Keep it short, keep it focused on them and not on you saying like you're new and fluffing them up with like rapport. Maybe for some that can work, but these logistics managers, they've been hit at every possible angle you could think of. They know what you're trying to get at. So like let them know you're useful in some way right off the bat without just like BSing your way around it, because they'll know what you're trying to do and then they'll just ignore you. And that's real life. You can't play the new card in real life, especially with your own business and you're calling these people for the first time. Logistics managers, they want someone that's confident and to respond as if you're a professor in that specific niche that they're in. And if you don't know how to respond to a specific question, research that question and know it for the next call, for the next shipper you call in that niche that you're specializing in. And this is why we niche down, so we can get familiar with how that specific conversation in that specific niche will go and what questions to ask and what answers to give back to them, so we can be seen in their eyes as the subject matter experts. If you need to land more freight, be persistent and follow up. Don't be annoying, but follow up. You won't get a yes from a brand new shipper you call on the first try. That's normal. Maybe they say like, hey, you know what? We're covered right now. But you know they're a hot lead based on how much volume they said on that call they're moving with their current brokers. Fine. Great. No issues. No big deal. You reply, hey, you know what? No problem. What's a time in the season or year that you might have a tough time trying to find capacity? Or is there maybe a different lane that you have trouble covering? A handful will actually give you a time of the year to follow up. Then follow up every week or two with value-driven emails, not asking for freight though, until that time of the year comes. Then make the call back, since you've over time been proving that you know your stuff. Consistency in the right way builds trust and shows you're serious instead of looking like every other broker just checking in to see if you've got any freight. Don't be that like mosquito that's landing on their ear, making them like slat themselves in the face. So then when someone does give you a chance, like, okay, sure, give me a quote on this lane. Or like, hey, I've got a hot load I need you to help me with. Jump on it. Over deliver. Give a fair rate and maybe a little bit lower on your first handful of shipments so you can get plenty of opportunities to build trust with. Find reliable carriers. Use your carrier vetting tool. Pay the carriers well. And communicate like crazy with the shipper until it's delivered. Treat that first load like it is gold. If you nail it, a lot more will come. I promise you. Okay, now how do I actually stand out to shippers amongst the thousands of other brokers with better technology, operations teams, $1,000 tools, AI integrated stuff, so you can actually win freight as a one-man band like me? We want to be the broker that shippers want to work with. Most new brokers never figure out how to stand out amongst the other brokers. Think about it. Like a shipper might have 5 brokers calling them every day. Why would they bother working with you? If you can't answer that, you'll probably be a part of the statistic. I'm just saying. It sounds so sad, but it's true. The ones who survive are the ones who go out of their way and give shippers a real reason to choose them. So ask yourself, what makes you different? What makes a shipper choose a brand new broker over an extremely established one, $1 billion 3PL? But seriously, wonder that. Like, it's not because you have a nice logo or because you're willing to work for peanuts. Shippers care about solving their problems. They care about reliability and communication and industry knowledge and niche expertise. They might also appreciate that you, as a small broker, can give them more personal attention than a giant firm. So a lot of newbies think like, you know what? I'm just going to offer a cheaper rate than anyone else to win business. It's going to be great. Where I'm just going to get so much volume. We're going to make so much money. No. Okay. Undercutting on price alone is a race to the bottom. Okay. And trust me, like, the bottom means bankruptcy, okay? There will always be someone willing to quote a cheaper rate, often by sacrificing service or running at a loss. If you try to be the cheapest, 2 things are going to happen. You squeeze your profit margin so much that you can barely survive, or you end up cutting corners, which leads to service failures. Or you attract the kind of shippers who only care about price. The minute someone else offers, let's say, $5 less, that shipper then, let's say, jumps ship, no matter how much you proved yourself. That is not a recipe for long-term success. Just saying. Shippers might be cost conscious. I mean, who isn't? I am. We all are. But what they really want is dependable service and value, okay? If their load arrives on time and intact with no headaches, that is worth more to them than anything. Really, that's their job. Their job is to hire quality brokers to do exactly that over and over again. A handful are willing to pay more for a peace of mind because they know they've been burned by brokers who are making 5% margins and not vetting any of their carriers. So don't sell yourself short. What we need to do is figure out your unique value proposition, otherwise known as your UVP. The thing that sets you apart. Here's a few ideas. Exceptional service and communication. This one sounds very generic, and you'd be surprised though how many carriers don't communicate well. Like you need to promise and deliver things like responding quickly to shippers for ETA requests, or even better, being proactive on your tracking updates. So like asking where your drivers are, and then give that info to the shipper even if they didn't ask. And a single point of contact, meaning you, who handles their loads start to finish. Shippers hate having a massive list of people they need to juggle through in order to get their answer, especially during a shitty situation. If you're a broker who always picks up the phone and solves problems when your shipper needs it the most, even if it's before you even wake up and your phone rings and you see your shipper answer the phone, even if it's like 8 p.m., 11 p.m., just about to go to bed, picking up the phone if they call, being there in person as well for the first load will take you past 99% of other brokers out there, and your shipper will gobble that service up, dude. Like, leverage your background. If you're a former trucker, use that. You understand drivers' needs and challenges, which means you can coordinate freight in a way that keeps carriers happy and shipments on time. You can tell shippers when you're prospecting, like, hey, you know what? I used to be behind the wheel for 5 years. I know exactly what can go wrong on the road and how to preempt it. And you can say, I speak the trucker language, so I make sure pickup and deliveries go smoothly. It's what I care about. It's my history. That experience is a selling point that many brokers cannot offer. I don't have a CDL. I don't know what the hell goes on the road. Technology and tracking. Okay, if you're savvy with tech, you can use tracking apps or offer like custom reporting. For example, providing shippers with automatic tracking updates or an online portal to see their shipments. A small broker that feels high tech and modern to a shipper is very memorable to them, okay? If you can't afford that stuff and you want it, and let's say it's something that your shipper, one of your shippers like just requires and you want their business, partner with the 3PL. Very easy. Next is like your carrier relationships. Maybe you have connections with a network of reliable carriers. Let's say you have 10 owner-operator buddies from your trucking days. You can tell a shipper, I have trucks ready in your primary lanes, and I'm not scrambling on the load board. I have go-to trucks that I trust, and I know these guys personally. That reliability is gold for a shipper if you have that luxury. I know a freight broker, Sarah. She passed the $2 million revenue mark her first year, specializes in flatbed freight for the construction industry. Maybe a little bit of an idea for you. Instead of trying to move any and every type of load, she dug deep into construction materials, steel beams, lumber, heavy equipment. She learned the seasons, for example, like when building is hot or when it slows, and then the challenges she learned. She also knew the knowledge of permits and oversized loads and tarping requirements. When she approached construction supply companies, her pitch was laser focused, okay? She'd say, hey, you know what? I remember when we last talked that you said you have a project site that needs steel beams. I actually have flatbed trucks with the exact tarp size and chains ready. And I know we need to arrange escort vehicles for oversized pieces as well. I'll handle all that. And she didn't try to compete on rock bottom pricing at all, by any means. And she competed on expertise and reliability. Shippers gave her a shot. And now she completely dominates that niche because she did her research. Like, her specialization made her the go-to broker for several big construction suppliers. That is what beats someone who tries to specialize in everything. Leave that wide net cast to the billion-dollar freight brokerages. Like, figure out what your strength or niche is and bake that into your sales pitch, okay? Write down one sentence that answers Why should a shipper work with me instead of someone else? Make that your mantra, okay? Maybe it's like, because I'm an expert in blank region or industry, or like I give white glove service with instant updates. Boom. This is a huge way to stand out in a crowded market, okay? And how you convince a shipper to take a chance on you. Different is better than just better, okay? Be different in a way that matters to your customers. Okay, so let's try to move some freight without screwing up at all, okay? So let's say you've won a load. Heck yeah, dude. Let's go, all right? Now comes a part that doesn't get talked about enough. Booking that load and making sure it actually happens, okay? Booking a load is the easy part, okay? Managing it from pickup to delivery is where brokers truly succeed or fail. This is where you prove your worth to the shipper. You can win a customer with sales, but to keep that customer, you need smooth operations. He's a smooth operator. Let's make sure you deliver, okay? Like literally and figuratively. A pretty bad assumption that a lot of newbies make is thinking like, all right, you know what? I've assigned a carrier to the load. My job here is done, okay? They assume the carrier will just handle everything perfectly. Wrong, okay? While most carriers and great carriers will do their job, you are the quarterback of every load. If something goes wrong and you're in the dark, that's on you, okay? The shipper doesn't care who the carrier is, okay? They're putting their trust in you as the broker or agent to find the one that will do the best work for them. Assuming the carrier will handle perfect communication until the load is delivered, especially on multi-day shipments like cross-country stuff, is a mistake that can cost you your reputation. Even the best carriers can have issues and traffic delays and truck breakdowns. They can get lost. So if you aren't hearing from them when you should, it's up to you to check on them when they would normally get to you. And get that update over to your customer so they're in the loop if any delays actually did come up. I booked a dry van carrier for a simple load of paper a couple months into starting my freight brokerage. Pickup was Monday for Thursday delivery, multi-day. Cross-country load to Florida, okay? Easy, right? I gave the details to the carrier and figured, hey, you know what? Cool. They've got it. I'll just check in on Thursday morning just to make sure they've got it delivered. I cringe at this so hard now. Thursday comes and I get an email from the shipper. Hey, just confirming if, delivery is going to be happening. And I replied back, like, yeah, we're all good. Not a problem. 5 minutes later, I get a very casual call, and the carrier is like, hey, you know what? We're actually a couple states away still. There's an issue with the engine. I hadn't checked in before updating the customer, and the carrier hadn't proactively told me. End result, late delivery, very angry shipper, and me doing very serious damage control. I learned my lesson, like, never assume, always verify. From then on, I put very clear procedures in place to monitor every load. Just a side note, by the way, most drivers are great at these updates. Don't pester them every hour. They're amazing and they need space and they want to be trusted. So give them that. But a once-a-day check in a multi-day shipment towards the end of the day, if you haven't heard from them yet, totally fine to check in. In this business, one mistake can erase like 50 great jobs from a shipper, okay? In other words, a lot of the time, unfortunately, you're only as good as your last load. You might do 10 loads perfectly, but the 11th goes south, and that's what the shipper then remembers the most, especially if your relationship is like still kind of getting there. Most importantly, they also remember how you handled that crappy situation. Like, if you jump on problems super quickly and you communicate very clearly, especially during those type of situations, you'll actually increase a shipper's trust in you. They'll think, you know what, hey, wow, like even when there was an issue, a big issue, they handled it immediately, and they didn't wait until the very last second to tell me. All right, now let's break down a very straightforward process to keep your loads on track and your shippers happy. Before you even tender a load, make sure you're using a reliable carrier. Check their FMCSA safety rating. Make sure their insurance is up to date. Use a carrier vetting software to see if they're legit and not a double broker, aka like a carrier who's illegally rebrokering out your load to another carrier. We don't want that. All right. A lot of problems can be avoided by choosing carriers carefully. What we don't want to do is grab the cheapest truck as like the decision maker, okay? We want to get the truck that does the job right. Once you book a carrier, confirm all the load details in writing. Email is fine. This includes the pickup number, the address, the appointment times, any special instructions like the driver must call 2 hours before delivery, or forklift is on site. There's no need for a pallet jack. And then your rate and payment terms. So this written confirmation, often called a rate con, is your contract with the carrier. And it makes sure that everyone is on the same page. Clear communication up front prevents a lot of headaches later, especially if there's claims. Okay, if you have everything in writing, you are gold. Once delivered, confirm the POD, which is also known as the proof of delivery, and let your shipper know that it's done, and ask if everything was up to their standard. This little extra step shows you actually care about the outcome, not just about getting paid, which, I mean, obviously that is the goal. I'm just saying. It's also the perfect opportunity, without sounding like you're pestering them, to comfortably ask, is there anything else that I can help with this week to possibly get more loads? Let's hop into pricing really quick. The difference between a broker who struggles and the one who does super well often comes down to pricing strategy. You can move 100 loads a week, but if you're not making money on them, I mean, like, what's the point? A lot of beginners are told or assume that the one way to win loads is to be cheaper than anyone else. Like they take give the customer a good rate to the extreme and leave themselves almost no margin. I've seen complete newbies celebrate getting a load only to realize then they're making like $25 on a $1,000 load after paying the carrier. After your factoring fee, you have made nothing, okay? Operating on ultra thin margins is not sustainable because things happen, like truck detention that you maybe decide to cover on your own, a fallout that forces you to recover a load at a higher rate, a quick pay fee, and then suddenly that tiny profit is a loss. Plus, you have your own expenses. You have load board subscriptions. You have office supplies, maybe paying yourself a salary. If you're only making 5% on each load, you have to move an insane amount of volume to make decent money, and you'll burn out doing it. So what's good margin? Industry-wide, freight brokers typically aim for somewhere around 20% profit margin on a load. For instance, if a shipper is paying $1,000 to move a load, a broker might pay the carrier $800 and then keep $200. That is a 20% margin. That's a fair deal all around in many cases. And of course, margins vary a lot by the situation. Like when the market is tight, for example, margins might shrink. And when you have a specialty or capacity is scarce, they expand. But what's important is don't consistently undersell yourself. If a shipper is saying like another broker can do it for $5 less, you need to be prepared to either politely stand your ground by re-emphasizing your value, or if you negotiate, never go so low you're almost paying them to move their own freight. I have personally left over 15 shippers now because they would only use the broker that was the cheapest, regardless of how well I did for them. Remember, like, you're providing a service that saves the shipper time and money, and you deserve to earn a profit for that effort. Let's contrast two imaginary brokers. Their name are Joe and Jane. All right, let's start with Joe. He's the cheap broker. Joe is so desperate to get loads that he will take anything, even if he's making no money, or maybe decides that day to make $50 profit. If a lane, meaning like a pickup location or a delivery location, normally has a carrier cost of $950, he'll quote the shipper $1,000 just to win it. After factoring fees, he can maybe afford to buy tissues for all the issues. God, that's such a sad image, man. So Joe, he manages pretty decent volume, let's say 10 loads a week. So he thinks, hey, you know what? 10 loads, $50 profit each, $500 a week, not bad. But then the reality is, like, one load had 4 hours of detention that came out to $150 that the shipper refused to pay for whatever reason, and Joe ends up having to cover it. He has factoring fees and takes on a couple lawsuits then for the side of another shipper because his carrier bounced off and he had to find a last-minute recovery. There goes half his profit, and there he is, anxiety and bedridden with his tear tissues because he only made $1,000 off 40 loads for the month. This is sadly very common for brokers who play the cheapest rate game and stick with shippers who don't value them. Jane, on the other hand, she knows what she's doing. She's taken a different approach. She built her business where she has fewer customers, but they actually allow her to not only make some money, but she also has time in the back half of the day to keep prospecting because she only sticks with shippers who don't waste her time. And then also don't give her unnecessary attitude or don't ask for like tracking updates every 20 minutes, but trusts her to get the job done. So she aims for a $200 profit on that same $1,000 lane by, let's say, finding a local carrier that can manage to move it for less and doesn't need to deadhead maybe that much for pickup. Maybe she loses a few loads to cheaper competitors between all of her shippers, but she focuses on shippers who appreciate reliability and pay for that, and leaving her more time in the day to do other stuff. Let's say she moves 10 loads a week, but $200 each. That is $2,000 a week to her. Now, if an issue comes up, she now has wiggle room, maybe to pay a truck or maybe a bit extra to handle some kind of problem and then still profit. She also has more time per load to make sure of the quality of service, since she's not just frantically juggling 50 ultra-thin profit margin loads on her own. After expenses, Jane is making a comfortable margin and can reinvest in growing her business, maybe, let's say, like hiring an agent or investing in better software, etc. Over a year, Jane's brokerage thrives and she can scale while Joe's in the basement with his tear tissues and hasn't seen his family for 7 months trying to pay his already discounted rent. That is such a sad thought. Oh my God. All right, so how do we calculate our rates to our shippers? So you're given a lane to quote by a shipper. You hop on the load board, you go on to, let's say, DAT, for example, to know roughly what carriers need to be paid and to check out what that same lane has been moved for in the past. It basically gives you lane load history. So we log on to DAT, we enter in the cities, states, weight, and dimensions, and it'll spit out a rate for you on what carriers have hauled similar rates for recently. For example, if DAT shows that carriers typically want $2 a mile on a 450-mile lane, you know now that $900 is basically what's standard for that trip. And then you then want to quote the shipper between $1,050 maybe or $1,100. So again, you're looking for around a 20% profit margin. So you cover the carrier at $900. You keep $150 to $200. Everyone's happy. Now remember to add in the fact that if you use a factoring company, they might take 1 to 3% of the total load cost, which is standard. So if you factor, let's say, 1.5% for a $1,000 load, they'll take $15, and in return, they'll grab all the load details from you that you enter into their portal. They'll invoice your shipper for you and take on that load debt so you don't have to, while paying you your profit margin immediately and the carrier immediately. I talk about this in way more detail in my free broker training course. It can get a little confusing, so just make sure to account for that in your profit. Maybe aim for at least $100 profit minimum, knowing your factoring company will be taken out a little bit, okay? If a shipper is really hammering you down to a rate where you'd make next to nothing, it's okay to walk away, okay? Just politely say, hey, you know what? I want to punch you in the face. No, I'm just kidding. I can't quite make that work and still make sure I can deliver the level of service that you need. If anything changes, let me know. I'd love to help. Sometimes they'll come back when that cheap guy they end up going for instead fails on them, because they likely will. And if not, you've saved yourself a huge headache, okay? Not all business is good business, okay? Only take loads that make sense to you. If a shipper ever questions your rate, highlight what they'll get for it. I have a reliable truck lined up, and I want to personally make sure this load gets delivered on time. Then, since this is the first load I'm moving with you, I will be there in person, obviously, if you're local. And then you'll get updates every step of the way. I've included a little bit extra in the rate to just account for any unforeseen issues, which means that I can solve any problems without having to come back to you for any more money. This is the final rate. This kind of transparency can earn you a lot of respect. Some shippers just go for the lowest dollar, and that's fine, and they're not your ideal customer. In fact, get rid of them. You only have so much time in the day, especially as a one-man band, but many will appreciate the honesty and the value-added service. And now it's really your time to make a move. Like, you could be looking back on today as the day that you took the first step to building an actual $1 million freight brokerage, which is very much in the picture. It is very possible, especially if you just put in the work and you have the grid for it. And you won't be alone. I shared these to help you, and there is a whole community. We have 210 members now in our community as of today of brokers and truckers turned brokers in our extremely active and welcoming Discord community. And if you need help building any of this up, there is a link in the bio. And if you've ever wondered step by step what a day in the life is like for me, check out this bad boy. Peace.